Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Aisha Speaks Truth. And before we dive into today, I just want to check something really quick because I'm noticing that I think, okay, on my Facebook, I had a little issue. So it looks like it's now starting. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're good. Well, guys, welcome back. I hope you all had a happy 4th of July celebrating this year has been incredible, but celebrating our 250th anniversary of American independence is insanely amazing. I felt a wealth of, I don't know if it's the fact that I did a lot of research on my recent book that's out, but I just felt a wealth of love for this nation and for how far it's come. And July 4th this year for me was very different as I read through the history of America from 1776 all the way to modern day America 2026. So it's been different for me this year. So I hope that that is reciprocated to everyone as the UFC stuff's happening and Trump is putting forth this pride in America and being an American. And I think that is sweeping across the nation actually. But I do want to share with you guys a cool opportunity that I had this past Sunday, July 5th. It was the day after our 250th anniversary celebration. Our church did a service dedicated to America, which was really amazing. My pastor spoke on the history of America, different events that led to our independence, and key people. And it was awesome. Okay. I got invited by my pastors or co pastors, Pastor Patricia and Pastor Mark Estes, to host a table in our foyer. And this service was completely packed. And I'm sure it's probably because it's July 5th, the day after Independence. Now, our services usually have about 800 people, but this was like packed. So, anyways, I had a table in the foyer because my pastor had asked me the Sunday before if I could sell my book in the foyer, being a part of the 250th celebration service. And I was so honored because at this moment in July, we take a 1 month sabbatical from a lot of different things. And we still have our Sunday services, our meetings, and all this stuff. But all the amazing activities and ministries that happen and things like that. Some of them take a sabbatical in July, so we hop back in August. And so to have a table, I was the only person that had a table in the foyer that last Sunday. Usually there's about two tables or there's one table, but it's like a normal Sunday service where someone's promoting something or somebody's talking about something cool, a ministry that's about to launch and they want to tell people about it. So it's always something really cool happening that blesses the body of Christ. And I was asked to host a table, which I was really excited about. And in hosting this table, I had to share with you guys like how God just did some amazing things through this. So that's me with the book. So my pastor announced that in both services, because we have two services, one at 9:30 and then one at 9 a.m. and then one at 11:30 a.m. And both services, she asked me to be there so that way I could be there to present my book and sell it in the foyer. And we literally sold out of all physical copies we had and literally had to do pre-orders. So I do have a stack of books downstairs for pre-orders that I have to bring tomorrow to church. That was a blessing though. So I got to talk about the book, and my husband was supposed to be my content creator and to take the photos of me talking to people, signing books, because I gave them I signed everybody's book, of course, because I was there. And they asked me to do special notes for some of them. And they're like, oh, give me a special note, special note. So it was really fun. But my husband was supposed to be in charge of taking the photos, and our table was bombarded by a lot of people that we weren't really expecting, just for both of us to be actually taking payments and talking to people. But that ended up happening. So my husband wasn't able to take photos. He took some when he could, but he wasn't able to be there like I wanted him to. So I was just like, okay, we just forget about that, and we'll just sign and we'll talk to the people about the book and what it is, what the book does and what it talks about and why you should get it. And the funny thing is, during second service, my friend happened to have brought her high quality camera with her this Sunday. And she saw me, signing books and talking to people. And she starts snapping photos. And she said, hey, do you mind if I just get some photos for you? I got my camera. I said, oh, I'd love that. I think God was just watching us and helping us because that ended up working perfectly. And she just shot, and I just was in my element, and she was like, okay, let me get some photos of you with the book. And as you can see, they're holding up the book. That's when the table got very slim because the table was packed with books until we started selling out. And I had beautiful decorations of for our to represent our nation. You know, our red, white, and blue, representing the American flag and patriotism. And it was awesome. I had people even wanting to buy. There was a lady that two ladies that bought the detail, the decor I had on the table celebrating 250th, and I literally put the flags on those little. They're like little displays that I had. I added the fly, I like taped it to the back because I wanted it to be a little bit more like spicy, if you will. And it was really fun. So they're like, I'll take it. We want to buy this. And I was like, you could really just get it on Amazon. They're like, no, we want to it's just easier if we can get it here. So my husband was like, I'll sell it to you for less than Amazon because, that's how he thinks. So they wanted to buy those, those little accessories on our table from us. And I was like, I added the flag to it. They said, I want the flag too. So they took that as well. But it was really fun. You saw a lot of people dressed up in their best to represent America. I had on my red, white, and blue too. It was so, so fun. And I just felt so honored to be a part of that service and the only one having like something of essence or something that you could grab to take with you to commemorate the 250th anniversary of American independence. So if you haven't gotten the book, definitely recommend picking it up. It is still discounted on Amazon. It walks you through 250 years of history. So it gives you a factual historical event for every single year from 1776 to 2026. And then with every single entry, I include a reflection, a scripture, and a prayer. So that way you can see God's providence through that historical event. And and then on the back of the book, I have sources that you can look up because I kept the historical event as concise as possible because the book is it's a massive project, okay, going from that many years of history. So I try to keep the historical event as concise as possible with not missing any of the important details and still being accurate. And then you can basically this book is broken down into 7 parts from the foundation, Revolutionary War, all the way down to, as I mentioned before, modern America. So it's I think it's something great to have on hand if you just want to reference history, just have something that you could reference for a historical review, something you could read with your family. It's family friendly. I read it with my 4 and my 6-year-old. My 6-year-old loves it. She's like, I love how it makes me feel. I feel closer to God. My 4-year-old said he did not like the book because he hated that we lost some wars. So that's his mindset. 4-year-old. It's beautiful though. And yeah, and you can, just read it as a devotional because that's kind of how it's set up as well. So it's marked down. You can check it out. It's only on Amazon and only available on paperback. Okay. And I think it'll bless your socks off if you pick one up. So I want to get into some headlines today. So I definitely want to break down the war in Iran. And we're also going to talk about the Supreme Court hearings and rulings that we have recently got out before they took their recess. And then we'll also talk about the Save America Act as well. And, of course, where we currently stand with this war in Iran. I'll break that down more too. So joining me to talk about these topics, because we want to talk about the conservative movements, where we stand in this. I'm going to bring on a special guest so we can get just get more opinions on this and more insight into what's taking place and how we feel about this. Feel free to hop in the comment section. I will try to check the comments, and if you want to say something or suggestion or ask a question, you can do that. Feel free. But joining me today is Michael Lauber. He is the CEO of Ex America News, and he's also the podcast host of The Insurrection. And he also has a background in economics as well. He's very well rounded. Is managing a lot of different podcasters on his own network. So I'm super excited to have him here with me today and to divulge into the headlines that we have for today's topic. So Michael, thank you so much for being with me.
Well, thank you for having me. As always, happy to be here.
Yeah. So I guess let's just go ahead and dive in. First, I want to talk about this war in Iran. And now I originally thought that it might be good if you know me, like, I don't know, I've discovered something about myself that I like to kind of go back in time to history and bring us up to the current things. And then we can dissect this. I feel like that helps you to dissect it properly when you have a
Historical
total view
perspective.
of what, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. So I was going to break it down. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. I think this might be helpful to our discussion today as we talk about what we should do with this war in Iran. What's the next course of action? Now, you and I have already talked about what we believe should take place next. We'll get to that. But let me just break down starting from January with the trigger, right? I call this the trigger. So January 2026, there was this killing of thousands of government protesters. But that wasn't the reason why the war started. It was because Iran, during one of our negotiations, told us that they had uranium developed to about 60%, which is very close to, say, weapons grade, 90%. Um, and then also you had the IAEA saying that they couldn't verify any of these nuclear facilities, like what was happening inside of them, that they were, didn't have full access to that. So there was so much happening there. And Trump has always said since the very beginning, since we started this war, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And then I think the killing of the protesters, I think that just really added to the
Oh yeah.
fuel. February 2026, sorry. We had talks trying to make a deal, failed diplomacy there. We held indirect talks with Oman, and Iran even made what was described as a surprising offer to its nuclear program. It seemed like both sides was going to work together in Vienna, but then that ended up falling apart, and we launched Operation Epic Fury.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have February 28th, Operation Epic Fury begins, and that's where we take out the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Then we also took out the commander of the Revolutionary Guard and Iran's defense minister. And I'm going to just go through this as quickly as I can. March through May, we have that brutal middle period. This is where the next 2 months, prove a little just wild. So we ended up losing 13 American service members. The Strait of Hormuz is blocked by Iran. We have global tensions now. And this is a global thing that's taking place. You have the offer of Iran a 15-point peace plan within that time period as well. May 5th, Operation Epic Fury ends. They came to a hard part trying to turn a ceasefire into an actual peace deal, or I guess an MOU, should we say, because it's really different from a peace deal.
Yeah.
June 17th, we have the Islamabad Memorandum, the MOU. Seems like that would have worked. It's kind of like a 60-day negotiation period for them to get to a final deal, just to put some things on the table, what they can agree on, and to stop the fighting. Iran ends up attacking ships. That MOU collapses. And there's, of course, that Israel and Lebanon, or Hezbollah, should I say, go back and forth. And that's also a part of that issue. July 6 to 7, and then we're here July 11. And today. So I want to say a quote from Trump's recent Truth Social post. He said 1,000 missiles are locked and loaded and aimed at the Islamic Republic of Iran, with thousands more to immediately follow, should the Iranian government act on its threat to assassinate the sitting president of the United States of America. In this case, me. Orders have already been given, and the U.S. military is ready, willing, and able for a 1-year period to completely disseminate and destroy all areas of Iran. Now, before we discuss this, I do want to play 2 more clips from Trump, and this was a recent press conference that he had, and then Michael will break this down, and we'll talk about what it means to finish the job, because that's what he says in one of the clips. So let's play our first clip.
Clip 1, here we go.
From the New York Post. I'd like you to address speculation that you're leaving Ankara not in the new Air Force One because of security concerns involving Iran. You've spoken today twice about them possibly assassinating you and possibly being successful. Did that concern have something to do with it?
Well, I speak about it a lot because, the life of a president is very dangerous. It's 5.2%. You know what a race car driver is? 1/10 of 1%. A bull rider, that looks pretty dangerous to me. It's 1/10 of 1%. No, it's 5.2% is you don't make it. You should have told me. You're an excellent reporter. You should have told me that years ago. Maybe I wouldn't have run. It's a very dangerous profession. No, I'm number 1 on the kill list for Iran. They're lovely people. I'm number 1. So I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I don't really care because I'm doing my job, and I'm doing it, I hope, better than anybody's ever done it, because we have a country that's hot and really, really successful. But I mention it only because it's on the list. I mean, it came out. There was another list came out yesterday, and I'm number 1 on. I like being number 1 on TikTok better, but I'm number 1 on the list for killing.
All right, one more clip. before we discuss this, okay? This is from the exact same conference. He was asked another question in regards to the an MOU or peace talks, and then this is his response.
Sick people and being led by sick people. What changed, and do you think
I got to know him. So I've said that about a lot. Now, when you say rational, I think they're much more rational than level 1, level 2. Level 1 is gone, level 2 is gone. This is level 3. I think they are more rational, but based on their actions over the last week or two, they're not doing a service to the people. And I think more than anything else is I got to know them. And I'm not sure I want to make a deal with them. We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
I think that was a good place to end.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what he just said. What do you think that it actually means to finish the job?
Hopefully, what he means by that is wiping out what's left of their political and military leadership, the Islamic government of Iran. You know, the people clearly want the yoke off from around their neck. That's what started this whole thing. Remember, you know, what brought this up was the people out in the street protesting because the currency had completely fallen apart. You know, we're talking beyond hyperinflation. We're talking like Zimbabwe type inflation there, where you couldn't buy anything. The Grand Bazaar collapsed and they turned on the government. That's what brought the people out in the street. I'm kind of oversimplifying things there, but then it's the actions of their government that got Trump involved again. And again, we're talking after the 12th Day War, after we'd already tried destroying their nuclear program, and they wholesale slaughtered at least 40,000 of their own citizens in the streets. Some estimates as high as 70,000. We don't really know for sure. Because of reliable sources, but we'll split the difference. We'll call it 65,000. There's tens of thousands more still in jail, and they are still executing their own citizens for voicing their concerns. And again, they are the largest by far state sponsor of terrorism and around the world, there and around the world, around the Middle East. That's what causes a lot of this instability. I think Trump has tried to extend the olive branch to them far more than he should have at this point. I think when he made the speech a few days ago and said, these people are cuckoo, that they're liars, they can't be trusted, he was dead on the money. And at this point, I really do think we have to either finish the job or go home, because there's not really an alternative in the middle. And when you get to the point, the citizens want to be free there. All we have to do is clear a pathway for that to happen, and then probably send in some level of armament for the citizens to overthrow whatever's left of their government, of the military police, the religious police and everything else. But they're hungry for freedom. But yeah, at this point, I think we just have to finish the job, especially with the threats on President Trump's lives and others here in the U.S.
Yeah.
These have to be taken seriously. And if they are dumb enough to actually go through and successfully assassinate or even attempt to assassinate President Trump, it's going to rain hell on Iran. And there is no doubt about that.
At the beginning of his presidency, sorry to cut you off, I remember him having a press conference where they were talking about threats on his life from the Iranian regime. And he said that he had written a note. I'm not necessarily quoting him exactly, but he said that he had written a note that if anything happened to him, that they would be totally obliterated. Do you remember that?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And they made threats against President Trump in his first term and even in between the two terms. They weren't threatening Biden. The IRGC released videos threatening President Trump because they take him seriously. They knew Biden was basically a vegetable. And again, would go along securing their funds. He released billions of dollars more money to them that was held up in, I can't remember if it was Swiss banks or where it was. But anyway, billions, not millions. Of dollars, but they knew Trump is a serious threat and would cripple or destroy their regime if that's what it came to, and that seems to be what it's coming to now. I know that they're discussing returning to the table for peace talks, but I got to be honest, I think that would be a giant mistake.
I agree with you. I think I love what he said, like we can sit here and play games, because it's just constantly going back and forth, and they've already put out, he said that, if we played that clip a little longer, he talked about him being at the top of their list, like a new list came out and he's still at the top of their list, the sitting US president. So, but I think that the thought is, or the next question is, how do we go about taking out the head? Because I agree with you. We can't, like, the peace talks aren't going to work anymore. The taking out certain infrastructures, that may hold us for a little bit. But at the end of the day, if we go after the the leadership, that's going to dramatically change everything.
Yes.
And not for us and for the people, for the rest of for the world, right? We won't have this issue with the Strait of Hormuz, these things. So I was talking to my husband because I'm like, how can we do this without involving Congress? Because if we were to put boots on the ground, you're talking about declaring war, then that would require congressional involvement. So
Yes.
what are we looking at? My husband said something really funny, so I brought him up. He's like, why can't we get Elon Musk to design us robots? Like robots can fight now. I'm like, why can't we? Why can't they hold a gun and go in for us and at least do the beginning of the damage, or at least have swimming robots that can go in the Strait of Hormuz and swim around and find these what do you call it, mines?
Yeah.
Why we don't have to necessarily send our people first? I thought that was a great idea, but my thought is too, like, at this point, I think taking out their leadership is the next best thing. I hate to say it like that because it sounds very cruel, but it's like you threaten our president, you threaten every American life for
Yes.
years. You've taken out our soldiers, and again, I don't think they're going to relent on this idea. I think they've even more ignited because look how many of their leaders we've taken out, right?
Yes.
So, I think the best thing for him to do is to not leave this open even past his presidency, is to finish the job.
Agreed. And I got a picture here I want to bring up real fast. Like, this is at the Ayatollah's funeral. This is their $100 million bounty on President Trump.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yes, so this is an overhead shot, and there were other banners and images up. Sorry, this is the first one I could pull up, but they had this propaganda up all over at his funeral. And you know who wasn't there? Mutaba, or Mutabi, or however you say his name, the son of the Ayatollah, who I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure is also either dead or a vegetable, since he still hasn't been seen in public or recorded or anything since the initial strikes. But that's, again, with their internal structure and how things work, that they're holding on to that for legitimacy, even though I think by now everybody knows he's toast. But we have to, like you said, like, we can't leave this on for the next president to deal with. This has
No,
to be finished. And I got to be honest, like, I don't see a peaceful path forward without eliminating their government, because you can't trust them, you can't rely on them.
no,
How many they've
no.
broken these agreements numerous times, these ceasefire agreements and other things. And yes, I am aware that at least one of the times Israel also violated the terms they agreed to. But again, that's a very, very small percentage of the overall violations. When 98%
Yes.
of the time it's Iran, and then Israel does one bad thing, it's not suddenly their fault that the agreement doesn't work. Um, and Iran, again, with help of the media, unfortunately, trying to get cover, be like, oh, well, what about Lebanon? Well, that had nothing to do with it initially. You guys decided that was
Yeah.
part of it after the fact, because, again, the media is going to go along with
Or
whatever. There's,
Hezbollah is
yeah,
who they're advocating for, another terrorist organization. And then here's the thing: we have constantly called them and designated them terrorist organization, and they do nothing but fund them
yeah,
all over the world. So you know, I think at this point this should have, and I agree with Trump, it should have been taken care of years ago.
yeah,
But unfortunately, he is the president to do it. And at the same time, I must say this: while we're in the middle of this war in Iran, and we're supporters of Trump, we support the Republican Party, things like that. You do have the fact that his approval ratings are dropping as
yeah,
well. And
yeah,
and then we're looking at the midterms. We're looking at those things now. I think with Trump, I think he's looking at all of those things, but I also think that he considers our safety and having this, I mean, not so-called regime change, but having this issue with Iran taken care of more than those other things.
yes. Yeah, because sometimes you do have to, part of what makes a leader a good leader is sometimes doing the right thing to do, even if it's not approved of right now. Even if the
Yeah.
popularity of what they're doing drops below 50%, you don't suddenly turn course. It's your job to sell why we're doing that to the American people. And it's one of the things that Ronald Reagan was so good at, why they called him the great communicator. Even when he did some things that initially maybe the American people weren't behind, he would go directly to the people, bypass the media, and make a speech stating, okay, this is why we have to do this now. This is why this is in our interest. And more often than not, that then shifted public opinion, explained why, it's our duty to do this. We have to strike back at Libya for blowing up Pan Am 103. We have to do this. We have to do that. It's our duty as Americans, or again, just bringing the fight to the enemy. I think that's something we've talked before about, unforced errors, where the administration could just do a better job on messaging on this. I think this is a perfect example of it right now. that if Trump were to make a short speech from the White House or from wherever, and basically say, we've tried to work with this terrorist regime in Iran. It obviously isn't working. You've seen them lie to us over and over again, agree to terms, then back down 24 hours later, continue mining the Straits of Hormuz, attacking 3 tankers trying to get through just less than a week ago. They can't be trusted. We're going to have to finish the job. We gave them an opportunity for a political way out, a peaceful solution, and instead they slapped us in the face, and they also attacked the other Gulf states and our allies in the region. It can't be tolerated any longer.
Yeah, but my thought is, or my next question, I guess, for you is, if we have to go the route of congressional approval, do you think we'd get it?
Nope. Unfortunately, and I do understand, you know, some people's concerns with this. I can understand. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I understand. High gas prices and other fallout from this is harming our people and some of our allies and our allies around the world, and we
Yeah.
do have to take some of that into consideration. Because though I think Europe should have gotten involved and helped us to secure the straits, other countries did try and step up and try to do things, and other countries are unfortunately dependent on this that do not have the ability to really intervene and do much of anything about it, like the Philippines or Japan, for that matter.
Yeah.
They are relying on us in a lot of cases. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is going to have to be resolved one way or another. But if we allow this terrorist regime control the straits, now they know the pressure point for the whole world. They know how to hold everybody hostage. And you can bet your bottom dollar, even if we agree to whatever terms, everybody backs off and they stay to it for a couple months. The minute something happens they don't like, they are going to close the straits again,
Yeah.
which will, again, hold all of
That's their
Europe.
leverage. Yeah.
Exactly. And now they know it.
I agree. I think I'm going to be praying. All I can say is I'm going to be praying for President Trump to have wisdom, but the
Yeah.
only path forward is to take out the rest of the leadership. Like, that's really
Yeah.
it. Like, if you do that, we were talking about our prices coming down, all these things most Americans are worried about. You're talking about, the bully, that you call them, the Middle East being taken care of, Israel having more of a safer ground there in that
Yeah.
region. You're talking about these proxies. Who's going to lead them now, and who's going to fund them now, if we topple that regime? So there's so much that could take place if this happens, if we just take out the rest of the leadership.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, even the proxies, if all of a sudden Iran's Islamic government is gone and they're no longer the bank and the clearinghouse to fund Hezbollah, Hamas, Boko Haram, all these other groups all over the planet. I mean, almost every Islamic terrorist organization, literally almost all of them, are funded by Iran's government, even Al Qaeda, or they use them for intelligence and other things. Like I keep saying, like they're the clearinghouse for everything. So you eliminate them, then a lot of these other groups and other places are going to disappear too. When you cut off the paycheck, people aren't going to be able to go out and I don't know, sing the song of their people, and whether that means, Christians in Nigeria getting attacked, or Israel getting
Yeah.
attacked through Lebanon or wherever else, or what's gone on with the Houthis up in Yemen and the surrounding area. All that goes away if all of a sudden they're not being funded anymore, or at the very least, it dramatically decreases because it's no longer being bankrolled.
Yeah. I think that's the final solution, but we'll keep just monitoring how things go. I love that he already says we got it locked and loaded with the military over there. We were aimed. We got
Yeah.
1,000 missiles ready. So if anything took place, hopefully nothing happens to our sitting president.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he has a plan.
Yeah.
Let's move on to talking about these recent Supreme Court rulings right now that came out. So the first one I want to talk about is the TPS one, temporary protected status. We have a few that came out before the Supreme Court took recess this summer. They handed down several major decisions that have real consequences, I think, for every American. So I want to walk us through three of the biggest one. And I think, Mike, you, when we were off air, you gave me another one that I covered on video, but I forgot to put in my outline here. So if you can remind me after we go through this to add that one as a number 4 that we're
Sure.
going to
Sure.
review. So the temporary protective status, Millen versus Doe, Trump versus Myatt. So the TPUS status, this has been created in Congress in 1990. I think the key word on this is temporary. And this, what I want to break down here is that we have the ruling that came out was 6-3 in favor of the Trump administration. You have Justice Alito, who wrote the majority opinion, that the court held that the Congress gave the authority to designate and terminate TPS to the Department of Homeland Security, not to the federal courts. So, in plain English, the courts generally cannot second guess the DHS secretary's determination about whether a country's TPS designation should end. So we had that 63 ruling. DHS response was following that ruling. They put it on X that the T in TPS stands for temporary. Not yet many of these designations became de facto amnesty. This is a win for the rule of law and common sense. So what this means going forward, um, it's certain countries. So we have the Trump administration has already terminated TPS designation for 10 countries, affecting more than a million people. The Supreme Court's ruling gave DHS broad discretion to terminate TPS designations while leaving constitutional challenges available only in limited circumstances. So that means countries such as El Salvador, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and others could face future reviews under the same legal framework. So um, I think this is a ruling that's, again, like the DHS said, is common sense. I think that this is something that we have to make sure that these rules are abide by. So people, like, you have people unfortunately staying here for longer than under the Biden administration. They're living, they got houses even under TPS statuses, and
Yeah.
I am for legal immigration. I welcome people to come legally do that. Make sure you're vetted and to come, especially if you're seeking a better place, you're coming from a hostile a country. Those things are amazing, but we do have to make sure that these laws are in place to safeguard what we currently have here that allows these people to come safely,
Yeah.
and also protects our economy. It protects so many things. So I think us honoring that, what we say is that TPS, that status, if it moves to them later becoming a legal resident, or what do you say, a naturalized citizen, if it
Yeah.
leads to those pathways, great. That means hopefully that person's been vetted, and they've done everything that they need to do, and they're now here permanently. But I think other than that, this should not be abused.
Yes. Well, and
Um,
that's the bottom line right there is the T in TPS stands for temporary. And a lot of these groups that brought this case forward have been here 20 to 30 years, and they're still
mhm.
under TPS, which is supposed to be 18-month temporary protected status because you're in a war zone, there's a natural disaster, something like that. That it's not the same as somebody lawfully immigrating here, going through the proper channels, being vetted, and also wanting to become an American. And that's the other thing I think we need to add to, regardless of how people are ending up here, that needs to be added to that. Like the only way is if assimilation is part of their plan. If they're leaving their country and they
Yes.
want to become an American. Because we can't have all these little enclaves that are popping up. That's part of why we see this disharmony right now within the country, and is a lot of these criminal organizations that have flown out or not flown out have come out of certain communities here. And Americans are sick and tired of that. We're sick and tired of all our tax dollars. When you look at the percentages with some of the groups who've just lost their TPS status, and how 76% of them are still on public benefits after being here 18 to 20 years, and it's unacceptable. We're not the world's welfare check. And again, temporary means temporary. The war in Syria is over at this point. The Haitian population that was brought here originally 20 some odd years ago was brought here after a natural disaster. I think it was a hurricane. Now I know, like right now, Stephen Miller did a great job explaining this to a reporter about a week ago, saying, yes, of course, Haiti is safe for Haitians, but it's just like the United States. There are pockets that are violent. There's pockets of Chicago, pockets of LA, and other major cities that are violent here, but it's still, by and large, the country is safe and for Americans in the same way Haiti is. We can't have these permanent de facto amnesty just to be nice. We have to be bringing in people that actually add value to America. Now, that doesn't mean we can't have some lawful refugees coming in here and there that are legitimate asylum cases, that we're protecting them from persecution in their homeland or wherever. But there's
Yeah.
policies and procedures that need to be followed to establish that. And at the end of the day, we also need to vet them and make sure they're not a threat to Americans.
Yes. Or our way of life, or our.
Yes.
I totally agree with that. And then here's the sad thing: when you break this down individually, when you look at not only from like the government standpoint of the policy, but what we saw under Biden is all of these people coming in with TPSs, and they're here, and like you mentioned, not just under Biden, but they've been here for 20 plus years, and now they are in this mindset where, they're technically American citizens, but they are not so legally or on
Yeah.
paper. So they got homes, they have cars, and they built a livelihood here, which is sad for them
Yeah.
because the administration basically failed them and our laws weren't upheld to make sure
Hmm.
that these people, aren't just staying here this long and building an entire life where they could easily from any administration be taken, all the stuff that they built and be taken away from them, and then they have nothing for their family. That's
Yeah.
like a sad reality, and I believe that that's what's happening to a lot of people. Is they come here, they on that TPS, they establish all these things for themselves, homes and all this stuff, and then again, like the minute, like I feel like Biden definitely failed the people he let in on these borders because you hardly did anything for them. You just
Yeah.
the TPS and all that, but now they're in a legal limbo,
Yeah.
where like I mentioned, some of them have homes, they have stuff, and some of them are, some of them are not like, other than the fact of breaking, maybe they broke a law, whatever. But some of them just on the TPS status, they've necessarily done everything correct, having these homes and all that. And the only thing is that legally, they're just not on paper.
Well,
They're not an American citizen. They don't have any paperwork other than that TPS in order to stay here and to have the assets that they currently have. And it's really sad that they have to face that reality.
yeah.
At the same time, I'm putting accountability on that administration for it, but you have to put accountability on the person too, because if you're going to come here, you have to be familiar with the laws.
Yeah. Well, some of that though too is, the law not being enforced is what led to them, being able to buy homes and other things here, even though they didn't have legal status. So the Biden regime changed the laws, or basically circumvented the laws, allowed banks to issue loans for homes to illegal aliens that did not have social security numbers or other proper
Mhm.
identification or whatever. And then a lot of these banks also then took high risk credit. I mean, there's an entire community on the border of Texas called Colonial Ridge that is hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens, and
Wow.
almost no Americans down there. I think it's around a quarter million homes. Um, and every one of those loans is going to collapse once
Wow.
the deportations finally come through, because you're obviously not going to pay for a home you don't live in anymore, especially if you've been deported.
Yeah.
Um, but it's setting up these. Essentially, it's the way I see it is setting up a hostage situation. That now the banks complain, well, we're going to have all these foreclosures. It's going to harm us, whatever. But they're the ones that allowed this to happen. They wanted the business. They wanted those dollars on the books. They issued the loans. Now it's coming time to pay the piper in more than one way, and they're going to get left holding the bag. Well, again, I don't think you should have ever done this to begin with, even if it was authorized. If you knew what was happening was that, like it or not, at the very least, they broke the law coming here, and they're probably going to get sent back out of the country. But
Yeah.
if you then chose to issue a home loan, and then the other side of the coin there with the open borders, and just to stick on home loans and living situations, is, over the last 5 years, we've had a 30% increase in the cost of homes and over a 20% on average increase in rents across the country, primarily due to illegal immigration and the laws of supply and demand. When you bring in 30 million illegal aliens over a very, very short amount of time, and you're not building adequate housing, well, just for Americans, then obviously that causes the price to go up, especially when in a lot of cases, like again, I'll go to Springfield, Ohio, where they dumped 20,000 Haitians in a city with a population of 55,000. You can't get a rental property there. It's more than doubled in their city to get an apartment because you
Mm.
brought in all these extra people and families, and you subsidize their rents. So landlords were going to take the sure thing. If we're subsidizing the check, they can get that. So that meant the price for a rental for an apartment or a house more than doubled in the city. And that's the other consequence we have to start looking out for our own people and stop paying so much attention to everybody around the world. We have to remove the splinter from our own eye before we remove the plank from our own eye before worrying about the splinter in our neighbors.
Yeah. Now, I think this should perfectly take us into the actual Supreme Court ruling that I did not add in my outline today, which is birthright citizenship. So let's just go
Yeah.
ahead into that one. Um, It's because this one, now I know I did a video on this one for some of my followers just to keep us up to date on what was taking place at the Supreme Court level and the ruling that came out. I don't agree with this ruling, but again, like I state, I respect the Supreme Court. I don't agree with the ruling because
Yeah,
I think that this again, when we look at the loophole in that, the fact that people were able to take advantage of this system, it kind of reminds me, not to take us off course here, but it kind of reminds me of the WTO. We talked about in one of my podcasts about China coming into the trade organization and how the loopholes they were able to take advantage of, remember?
yep,
And then that ended up crushing our businesses. And then, of course, the WTO took forever to hear cases. And so, it was a disaster bringing them in, even though it was sold as a good thing.
of
It kind of
course.
reminds me of that.
Yeah,
So you
you're
have,
right on point with
unfortunately,
that.
these, yeah, you have these people who, and I remember before studying as I have the our policies and what they're meant to do and why they were first established. So I said at the beginning of my podcast, I like to look at, like, have that more broader perspective to be able to answer the questions of today. You need to look at it historically. Why did we even make that law? What was happening during that time? And I think Trump did that perfectly. He talked about this where this was during the time of slavery, right? Was this
Hmm.
time where we were trying to make slaves American citizens. And so, um, if you didn't know that, this sounds like a great idea to say, oh, their kids are born here. Like everybody wants to come here to have their kid here. But then you see things like China and Russia where they pay their people to come here to have kids and then bring to so they have that citizenship, and then they're indoctrinated in that government of their parent country, China or Russia, and
Hmm.
they're there to unfortunately become spies or become people that can basically access important and confidential things within the U.S. And you have that's like a more of a governmental level. Then you have just people coming, what we call tourist, uh what do we call
Birth
that, the
tourism, birth
birth tourism.
tourism.
They come here, what a term, birth tourism. So they come here with the idea that if I have my child's going to be an American citizen, and they can stay here based off of that. And we've seen that take place a lot. Now, I love that people see this as an amazing country. I love that that we can still hold that pride, and people want to come here, and they want their kids to be American citizen. But at the same time, with us discovering these loopholes and the people unfortunately that want to take advantage of it, I think we need to have a revamp of this system. And
Yeah,
uh, again, I don't agree with the Supreme Court ruling only because we've seen these loopholes and we understand what that means to America and the dangers that it could pose. I feel like it's also a national security issue, but um,
yeah,
that's that's where I divulge. I just think that that this was not a good ruling. I think that
yeah,
we need to have other safeguards. I don't know if we could do something else in Congress since this is what happened at the Supreme Court.
yeah.
Let me know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the dissent that what Thomas and Alito wrote really nailed it. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. That's one thing we have to remember. A poorly, well, it's not even poorly written; it's poorly interpreted in modern day.
Yeah.
Of the 14th Amendment. That's the entire problem here. This was never intended to mean that, if somebody was here and they were born on U.S. soil, they were automatically a citizen, even if their parents were both foreign nationals. And previously, this is how courts have ruled, even in the late 1800s and early 1900s. That like the son of a diplomat was one case that they determined he was not a U.S. citizen. His parents were here for political reasons. It was just accidental timing of his birth, why he was born on U.S. soil, and he was still a citizen of, I believe, France. And sorry if I've got the wrong country. Same with other instances where this had happened. We determined no. Not to mention, early on, in cases where I do think it was being abused with a lot of Native Americans, the courts determined, well, you're in your own reservations, technically your own country, so no, you're not a citizen of the United States. The whole reason for this law was to protect slaves and the descendants of former slaves. Because, again, we had southern states, again, with Democrat governors, but nobody wants to talk about that, that were wanting to send a lot of people back to Africa. They'd been here for generations. They'd never been to Africa. America was their homeland, and we had to alter the Constitution to prevent what was going on in the South, basically retaliation for the South losing the Civil War. It was never intended to create a path for birth tourism or anchor babies or anything else that it's led to today, this
Yeah.
modern bastardization of what the law is supposed to be. And all we have to do is look at what was being written at the time, the discussion around the 14th Amendment. Again, this was to prevent the abuse of former slaves following the Civil War, either saying they were non-citizens and just had no rights, or actually sending them back to a country they'd never been to before.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think I was gonna go into the next ruling that we have before we get to the Save America Act. So I do want to talk about the presidential remover power. I don't know if you've seen that one, Trump versus Slaughter. So in this one, majority 6-3 on this ruling, which is basically that the president has the authority to fire officials and independent agencies like the FTC, not necessarily Federal Reserve and all of those things. Those could still be up for debate, but
Yeah.
this was granted to the president. And I wanted to take a look at this case because when you look at the Constitution, we look at Article 1 and Article 2, where this is talking about, I think, the key word and maybe one of the most important words in the Constitution, vested and trusted too. You know that power is given over to them. It says this a couple of times when it comes to our different branches of government.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna just pull this up because I want to read this accurately. I think I have a mini Constitution on my desk over here too, but
Good
let
for
me just
you.
go this way. Well, turning point.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so they give us little mini constitutions, guys. It's beautiful. But I'm gonna pull up my notes here, which I have that the article 1 and 2 written here as well. So let's see here. All right. Sorry about the delay. Okay,
Oh, you're
so we
fine.
have uh there we go. Finally found it. Okay. So when we look at Article 1, for example, this one says the judicial power of the United States shall be vested, there goes that word, in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. We have Article 1, Section 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, the executive power, this is where we get to the Supreme Court case, shall be vested in a president of the United States. And so this is the executive powers vested in the president. This can Congress, I think the main question from this is, can Congress create executive officers whom the president cannot remove? And if you're serving in the, with the authority of the executive, then the executive office, I think that the president should have that authority and the power to remove you if you're not fulfilling the agenda. Or,
Yes.
so my personal thoughts on that. Chief Justice Roberts explained that officers who exercise executive authority must ultimately remain accountable to the president through his power of removal. Justice Gorsuch wrote separately and went even a little further. He argued that so called independent executive agencies have always been difficult to reconcile with the Constitution because executive power belongs to the president. So we had this for nearly 90 years where the president generally could not remove FTC commissioners simply because they disagreed with how the agency was being run. So the Supreme Court's majority concluded that if the officials are exercising executive power, then the president must have the authority to remove them.
Yeah.
Um, and this is reasonable because you have the president is supposed to be the one that executes. He's the one that's supposed to execute those laws. And I think, again, if you have somebody who's not on page with that and they're under the executive authority, then he should have the authority as he's an overseer to be able to remove them. What are your thoughts on that ruling?
I agree completely. If you're going to put somebody under the purview of the executive, they have to have the ability to remove them if they're not executing the will of the president.
Hmm.
They're in control of it. It's like any other business or company, if you think about it that way. The chief executive, yeah, maybe they have to run some things by the board or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's their decision. And if you have somebody that is either blocking what you want done, or in this case, the will of the people, what they voted for, there have to be passed to remove them. And again, you always serve at the pleasure of the president. If you're in any of these agencies that fall under execution, under the executive, whether that's federal law enforcement, intelligence agencies, all the national or the atomic energy, anything that is under the president, any of these departments, then he should have full power to remove anybody he wants for any reason at all, to be honest. Because again, if you're out of alignment with what the agenda is for the executive, then you got to go. And the same would be true the other way around. If there was a holdover, but the difference is we wouldn't hear anything from the media if this was the case. And if there was a holdover that Biden had in place and he was blocking part of Biden's agenda, and then Biden fired him, the media would be like, yeah, good. Bob over there was blocking, whatever, and it was time for him to go. But when it's Trump, suddenly, they want to leave all their little bureaucrats in place. They want to act like they're protected, that this is a permanent bureaucracy, which unfortunately it kind of is. But yeah, this is why it's good that we now have this affirmed by the Supreme Court that President Trump and future presidents can fire whoever they want. And to go back to what you said too earlier, real quickly, regarding the Federal Reserve. Well, the Federal Reserve is, they're as federal as Federal Express. They're not a part of the government. They're a banking cartel. So it doesn't work the same way. In reality, them extending the power for the president to pick the chief executive at the Federal Reserve off a list that they provide, they in reality don't even have to do that. They've just agreed to it.
I think this is good. I'm glad that you brought up that even the other side, because I remember seeing a lot of comments about, remember when if the Democrats come back in power. The thing is that we want to follow the Constitution. It doesn't really, and when we're talking about decisions like this, we're not looking at necessarily, it's important who's in power because that's the direction of the country. But we're talking about remaining true to our foundations, remaining true to what the framers wrote in the Constitution. And what did that look like when it came to these separations of power? And is there something being overlooked and not being done correctly? And that's what we're looking at. So whether a Democrat leader comes into power maybe in 60 years from now, we should be following the Constitution, and that's the thing. So, and I love that you mentioned, like, if it were Biden or whatever, it doesn't matter who the president is. We need to, as a country, hold to these foundational truths. Okay, that's how the framers, said it. Intelligent men. I was about to say men of God, but intelligent men. And for their day and their time, I want to say Thomas Jefferson was like 35. So insane. I'm 35. Can you imagine being a framer of the Constitution? That's insane.
Yes.
Or being signing the Declaration of Independence. That's
some of them are in their 20s that signed the Declaration of Independence. I think the youngest was like 22 or 23.
That's so crazy. I know we're going off a little tangent, but it's insane when you look at that, right? Like, it's like, what are we doing with our lives? so
yeah,
they were doing big things. They were risking it all. But I totally agree with that ruling, and I'm really glad that was established, because you have these, we already have these lower courts trying to block Trump, and I'm glad that we have certain rulings on that too. But those are great. So let me get into, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip to the Save America Act, because we still have that. If I haven't missed any updates, that's still sitting in the Senate.
Yep, pretty much.
And I think Trump posted a recent Truth Social post where he was basically saying he's refusing to sign the Housing Act as a part of a protest. He didn't veto it, but refused to sign it as a protest to them getting the Save America Act passed. And I remember seeing in that same Truth Social post that he was telling Republicans to kill the filibuster too. What are your thoughts on it? I agree. We need to pass the Save America Act. When you look at the statistics for this happening, for voter fraud happening nationwide, it's small. It's not as huge as we think it is. However, it could be the fact that we have not discovered it yet. It could be the fact that we haven't uncovered the fraud that's actually taking place. And we've seen some of that. We've seen it at I believe this was in Michigan, where you had a Muslim man who was running for, I think it was a city councilman.
Yes.
And he was on camera, with the mail-in ballots. Insane. And that's been happening a few different times. Like, it exists. But to say that it's like huge and like, that's
Well,
another thing where I think that might be what the Democrats maybe are considering, or the fact that they're just,
well,
I don't know, I don't really understand the reasoning behind this.
that's
But
their
if we,
argument. So, sorry to jump in, but I think I can
yeah,
sum this up pretty quickly. The left in the media's argument is, well, it never happens in mass in order, enough to change the outcome of elections. But that's already not true. I mean, you just had a case in New Jersey where they determined it. They have that the number of votes that were altered illegally there changed the outcome of a local election. You just had the Hamtramck, Michigan case that you discussed. And this is a story that just broke yesterday. We finally have the evidence. After examining over 155,000 absentee envelopes, we discovered over 26,000 absentee ballots were unlawfully counted in Detroit's 2020 election.
what?
And yeah, and this just happened. Well, we also have confirmation in Georgia that in Fulton County, Georgia, they don't have enough physical ballots to justify the numbers. They were short. They were short. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the number. Around 30,000 ballots there, which was more than enough to flip this whole state of Georgia from Biden to or from Trump to Biden. So we know this is going on. Maybe it
Mhm.
isn't. It depends on your definition of widespread. It's the old 51-49 philosophy. You only have to get enough votes to win. And everybody can look at what just happened in California. You know,
Yes,
I,
I was gonna mention that
I
next.
mean, Spencer Pratt is probably the best example, or the most known example, I should say. But the best example is Steve Hilton. There's not a poll, not a real poll on the planet that 6 months leading up to the election did not show Steve Hilton at number one with a bullet. And somehow, a week before, when the ballots all come in for the election, somehow this guy that wasn't even charting in the top two positions until a week before the election, Basura, suddenly he wins the most votes in California. Like that doesn't pass the smell test.
Yeah,
He was nowhere near it. Hilton been significantly ahead for close to a year. Um, and then you get into Spencer Pratt and the shenanigans there, where somehow all the late voters knew they didn't need to vote for Karen Bass anymore, that they should all vote for Nikki Rahman. Oh, by the way, that property or that sales tax that failed, everybody that voted late seemed to know they had to vote for that too. And like that's not how things happen in the real world. You have what you
yeah,
call standard deviation when you're looking at large numbers and votes and stuff like this. That yeah, maybe things might shift a little bit in certain pockets, but they don't shift in broad. I mean, Nikki Rahman couldn't even win her home district. She came in third there. So how did all these late voters in California know to vote for her to make sure Pratt was not on the ballot against Karen Bass?
mm,
It defies logic.
yeah. I think we should be investigating this more, and I agree. We need to pass the Save America Act. I think this is again another common sense law.
Yeah,
Based, you have to just be American citizen to vote, and only mail-in ballots for. I think you mentioned those in the military, those basically where it's absolutely necessary.
yeah,
So I totally agree with that. I don't think it's hindering anyone. I remember the Democrats saying something of, oh, well, you're going to hinder married women from voting. I'm like, I'm married, and it was seamless to get all of my stuff. So,
yeah.
uh, yeah. So
And
I think their
honestly,
argument falls apart. It's
yeah. Well, and the other part is, oh, well, people don't know how, minorities don't know how to get IDs. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. That is so insulting. I don't know
Yes, it
one
is.
person that doesn't know how to get an ID of any skin color. That
And
is
like, even if you look at those in the hood, they are people that are driving, right?
yeah.
There people are so excited. Like when you think about teenagers, they're so excited to get their permit and their driver's license to be able to drive, right?
Hmm.
I remember that when I was a teenager, I was so excited to like have my permit, have my
Yeah.
mom there and the passenger, or my dad there and the passenger side driving, and then to get my driver's license was is insane. Um, and so it's like young folks look forward to those. The only people that literally break that is those that are just not wanting to follow the law. But for the most part, like this is common sense. This is what every American has. ID. Every American has this. This is the rules of the law. This is the rules of the land.
Yeah.
And it's just the only thing I can say about this is common sense. It makes no sense that we shouldn't have people voting in American elections should be American citizens. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
Again, like I remember Trump mentioning that it's just for cheating. Like
Yes.
and this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's really It's pathetic that this is where Congress is and John Thune is when this is an issue that polling again puts it at 85 to 87% of Americans support voter ID with proof of citizenship. And this is one of the few things that's gotten more support, not less, over the last 6 months. Um, even a majority of Democrats are fine with voter ID. It makes zero sense to me that we can have this many saboteurs on our own side.
Yeah, and the fact that the American people also want it. I'm gonna read this quote from Donald Trump of Truth Social. Bear with me, guys, because he's a character. The Democrats will terminate the filibuster if and when they ever get the chance to do so in their very first hour, and I will no longer be able to call them Democrats again. The title "dumb" will revert to the Republicans who allow this horrible calamity to happen to our party and our nation itself.
Yeah, he's exactly right. And I want to add one other thing with the filibuster too. So, first of all, it is not true that the filibuster was always part of the procedural process in the Senate. It was not there at our founding. It was added later. The purpose for it was to give the party on the losing side of an issue an opportunity to make their case and hopefully bring some people over from the other side to whatever that side of the issue was. So the way it worked originally was every member of Congress that wished to got two chances to go to the floor, unlimited time to make their case. So it was a way to kind of like stall things out. So maybe you could cut some deals or do whatever, but they could swap out who it was until every member that wished to had been up at least two different times talking as long as they wanted. Then you had a regular floor vote with a regular 51-49 majority to determine the way the issue went.
Mhm.
Later, we ended up with what I've been calling the zombie filibuster. And that's what we have now, where somebody that wants to oppose something just stands up, puts their hands up, goes filibuster, and then suddenly it just shuts down all debate, all everything. And now you need a 60 vote majority to override that. You don't have to hold the floor. You don't have to make a case. You don't have to do anything. I think we just revert back to the original filibuster. We can let these Democrats and Rhino Republicans that do not wish to pass voter ID. We can let them go on the floor and make their case of why this isn't necessary or why it's whatever, and then have an actual vote on it, and it will pass. Thune knows what he's doing. Thune is a uniparty, undocumented Democrat. He knows exactly what's happening right now. We keep hearing that there's around 10 Republicans that do not want to pass the SAVE Act. The other thing I keep hearing is that there's at least 6 that are only there because of voter fraud. And I think this is probably true.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, again, we'll keep monitoring that as well, to see what the outcome is. I think it already passed in the House. We just got the Senate.
Multiple times.
So,
And
yeah.
one other shout out, I guess, before we move on to this, if I could, Anna Paulina Luna, she's really fighting for this for President Trump and for America. She's
Mhm.
now said that she is going to attach it to every bill the House takes up
Mhm.
to force the Senate to consider it and at least give it a vote. And you know what? We need more people like that with that mentality. That, you know
Yeah.
what? If you guys aren't going to do the right thing, we're going to gum up the system with the tools that we have. We are going to force you to consider it at some point.
Mm. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Um, this has just been and I feel like it's been a very interesting year with so much happening, but
really
a
has.
very productive year of us revisiting the Constitution, us really establishing what things mean. And I think this is healthy for America. This is good.
Yeah.
We need to know what it's saying. We need to hold to those values, and I think this is great. And fight for those, our Constitution. I'm going to end on this because we are nearing the end of today's episode. So I want to bring up my book again. One Nation Under God is my new book that is out on Amazon right now in hardback copy. It's going to walk you through 250 years of America, of our history. This is how it looks. One Nation Under God. It'll give you. I think it's a book that will definitely root you in your spiritual foundation within America. That was my goal. And when you see how much the framers and of the Constitution, when you see how much Americans that played pivotal role in our founding, and again all the way to modern America, how much they invoked the name of God even in war, even through these trying situations. Even when they invented things, it's insane. And I think if you are cognizant of that, if you're aware of that, it's hard for somebody to challenge you and say, you know, that America has no founding in Christianity or in the Bible when it's the most quoted text. So when you understand that, and I think that this book will also give you not only just that understanding, but it makes you proud. It makes you feel that you can accomplish anything. Me going through this, our history, and reading about people that I never even heard of before and what they did, and how prominent they were, was extremely encouraging to me. It made me want to like go out and do big things. So as you read through our history, you read through, our founding, and again, I don't sugarcoat anything. I try to closely to follow my father God, who doesn't sugarcoat anything when he wrote the Word of God, who didn't do that. So everything, all the historical events are accurate. I did have experts in colonial times. I had an English teacher and a few other friends take a look at this manuscript before it was ever published so we could be as accurate as possible, and make sure that we have the essence of the book is captured. And from those reviewers' statements, which you will see in the endorsements part of this book, it seems like I, they captured exactly what I wanted them to get from reading this book. And so, yeah, make sure you pick up the book. It is still marked down on Amazon. You can pick it up. It's only available in hard copy because I want you to have something documented in your hand that you could reference as a historical text, something accurate that you could refer to. You don't have to buy any like necessarily books that I had to buy in order to do this work. I have been studying this since last year. I just didn't know that I would put it all into a book. So I've been reading some very dense books to get to this place, but it's been awesome. So I try to make sure that every resource or every source that I use to give you the historical resource or the historical event for every year is something you could find for free online. So and it's not Wikipedia or anything that's not legit. So that is in the back of the book if you want to dive more into a historical event that you think is awesome. But yeah, so that's that. So check it out, pick it up, buy an extra copy. And Mike, I do want to thank you so much for being with me today and looking through everything that's taking place, the Supreme Court breaking this thing down. Um, I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you
And
for having me as always.
I will be live next week, Saturday, 2 p.m. ET. You can hop on then as well. Make sure you can bring your questions if you like. Depends on what's taking place. We will try to dive as deep as we can into that news and bring you facts. We'll give you our commentary from the conservative side. And Mike, I'm throwing you on the spot here,
Oh,
but
yeah?
eventually, not now because we're still in like this preliminary period, I would like to dive into the Charlie Kirk case. I don't want to do that
Yeah.
now because I feel like it's too early and I don't want to be a resounding gong. There's still evidence coming forward, which is a lot of evidence implicating Robinson, but I want to wait till we see what happens after this preliminary hearing before we do an entire episode on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, a lot of the myths we'd been hearing before are already falling apart.
Yep.
And there's been one
Great.
or two other good questions, though, that have come too. But, again, we got to see everything when it comes out. But yeah, it'll be a good discussion. But yeah, mostly the myths have fallen apart. But yeah, I also have seen one or two good questions that are being asked now too. But it'll make for a great conversation.
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna be good. You and I have been kind of talking about this off camera, so that's why I was like, I think I'll have Mike join me for that episode because I know you're very into this as well, looking at the
Yeah.
details of the evidence. And I think here's my line as a Christian conservative is, I think, and even just if we took out like I'm never going to separate myself from the Lord, but if we look at just conservatives as a whole, I think the thing that separates us is the fact that we like to stay grounded in facts. And in order to have that, you need evidence. And in order to, it just, you know what I mean? Like just the conspiracy stuff is wild because
Yeah.
in this moment in time is destructive. So,
Agreed.
yeah, like I said, I don't want to be, we could definitely have gone into it in this episode, but I just don't want to sound like everybody else. um, as the facts and evidence come out, I'm going to collect them, and then
Oh,
you and I we'll talk about everything. We'll talk about what people have said versus what we see as an evidence, a piece of evidence. We can, you and I can do it. I think it'd be fun. and fun and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Fun in the fact that we have substantial evidence to make a case for something else, but sad in the fact that we did lose someone who was vital to the
Yeah.
movement of Christian conservative, a man who was a father, who was loved by many, who shouldn't have lost his life that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
I
you
want
know,
to take
it's
something like that seriously. I don't want to just get on and talk. You know what I mean?
agreed.
So yeah,
Yeah, Charlie Kirk's death really has just had a ripple effect, not just through our nation, but through the conservative movement. It's unveiled a lot of
yes,
things. And, even some of the questions that were asked early on, it's not that they were illegitimate, it's that then the reaction to it was to develop these wild conspiracy theories.
yes,
Asking a question about the jets from Egypt or the jets from Israel or whatever. Okay, fine. I want to explore all avenues. But when you develop these insane theories around them, especially when your information then gets slapped down, that's where there's a problem.
and you still defend it. you
Yeah,
still
exactly.
you don't repent. You don't say, "Hey, I got it wrong."
Yeah, and there's
If you were really looking for truth,
yeah, and
I mean, and here's the thing too. Before I let you speak, that I think is, if we're always talking about, oh, you can't trust the federal government. Okay, there's some truth to that, but we elected
yeah,
a president who we believed was different, an administration we believed was different, who
mhm,
I think, Trump, he's one man, of course, but I feel like he's done a great job, or at least a very better job than most, in
yeah,
vetting the people around him and removing those who need to be removed in order to get the job done.
yeah,
So I feel like out of every I was saying that I just think personally, out of presidents we've had prior, this is one that we can give more credibility to and rely more on than not, to
yeah.
say that he's got something up his sleeve, that any of it, like, that he would want to hold back evidence, or be, complicit in something crazy.
No,
Uh,
I mean, I don't think there's any chance anything like that's true. And I think Trump also learned his lesson with who he keeps around him to a certain extent. Again, it's not perfect,
Not
but
perfect.
with people that he had around him in his first term, people that he found out later, like Bill Barr and others that he found out he just couldn't trust or were directly
Yeah.
sabotaging him. And then there's been a lot more care and concern around that. I think by and large, the team he has appointed is doing a great job. Again, it's not to say I'm not going to complain about certain things like the DOJ, but other than that, I think they're by and large, Marco Rubio is doing a fantastic job.
Oh
Um,
yes. Oh yes.
and there's numerous others. And some of these people, like Bill Pulte's currently being sabotaged, unfortunately, again by the Senate. But even there, as temporary director at the DIA, he's doing a fantastic job. Um,
Hmm.
but it's
Yeah.
never going to be perfect.
It's not going to be perfect, and but I think we're better off. Yeah, so I definitely want to dive into that. Like I said, I'm going to just be pulling and collecting information as we go, just so that way I kind of have something put together, and then we can run off of that. But and it's a case that I want to be sensitive to, not only because I'm a part of Turning Point, as you know, like part of the TPUSA community side. Not only that, but it's just that this is a horrible situation. Like,
Yeah,
uh, in any way you slice it, it's just bad. So
yeah.
yeah, but I don't want to come with conspiracies. I want to come with facts. And I think, and you do too. We both want. That's why I want you on this one with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you again for being with me.
Thank you for having
And
me.
yeah, so guys, thank y'all so much for tuning in with us. I also want to say thank you to everyone that has already purchased a book. Okay, because I want to make sure I say that, because I know when it first dropped, there were a good bit of people that purchased. So thank you guys so much, and I really hope it blesses you. Make sure to leave a review as well on Amazon. And if you haven't picked it up yet, I encourage you to pick it up. It's still marked down, and if you got Prime, it should come really, really quick, and you can go through it with your family. Like I said, I've gone through it with my 4 and my 6-year-old, and they have different views on it. but overall, you can read it as a family book as well. Guys, thank y'all so much for joining us today. I hope this was informative for you. If there's a topic of some sort that you want us to dive more into, or you'd like me to focus on and cover, drop it in the comment section. I might just bring that into our next live stream. So look forward to seeing you guys next week. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your weekend. See you. Bye for now.